There's so much talk about what AI can do and will do, what it does to humans, to jobs, how we even qualify, how we become more proficient in our work. Lots of questions. Today, we'll see if we'll have some answers for you. So stick around as we talk about how we can design for AI, attention, and the modern mind. Let's get started. Hey, welcome back to another episode of What's the Buzz, where leaders share how they turn hype into tangible outcomes. Today, we'll talk about how to design for AI, attention, and the modern mind. And who better to talk about it than somebody who's specializing exactly on that, Steven Puri. Hey, Steven, thank you so much for joining.
I appreciate having me. I hope this is one of the more engaging and maybe actionable episodes.
I'm pretty sure we'll have a good conversation. We've already talked quite a bit before we went live, and really looking forward to your perspectives, what you're seeing, and where things are going. So, Stephen, not everybody knows you. Why don't you tell
A little
the audience a little bit
background.
about yourself, who you are, and what you do? Yeah.
Okay. For those playing along at home or driving their car, here is the very short version of why this may be interesting to listen to me. I am one of the few people you'll meet who has been a senior executive at 2 motion picture studios. So I've worked with a lot of high performing creative minds. I've also raised over $20 million of venture. I've run 3 tech companies, 1 successful exit, 2 failures. And the parallels, the lessons from seeing both on the technical side and the creative side, how humans develop habits for high productivity, sustainable high productivity, has been really interesting to me. And that's what I lecture about a lot.
Awesome, wonderful. So I'm sure lots to cover, and especially having been a leader and having been a leader myself, you know, I see leaders facing new challenges and different challenges, but we get into that in a little bit. Folks, for those of you in the audience, I'm always curious to see how global our audience is. Please put in the chat where you're joining us from, and let's see, from which parts of the world you are tuning in from today.
I just
Also,
added to the chat. I'm in Austin, Texas. I just put that in
oh
there.
yeah, right. Beautiful city. I was just there a couple of weeks ago. One of my favorite places to visit. Next time we should catch up too.
Now we know each other, yes, of course you'll have to come.
Exactly. So folks, if you're looking to learn how you can turn technology hype into business outcomes, take a look at my book, The AI Leadership Handbook. That's on Amazon and any good bookstore where you can find modern nonfiction literature. Now, Stephen, in good old fashion, I would love to play a little game to kick things off. And I was wondering if you're up for What's the Buzz? What do you think?
How could I not be? How could I come here and not be up for it? Let's do this. Come on.
Awesome. Wonderful. So here we go. If AI were let's see, what is it? If it were a color, what would it be? 60 seconds on the clock.
Ooh,
Go.
okay. So I would say that's a really interesting one. For a color, I would say it is like a blue turning into a yellow.
Okay. And why is that? Why is it blue turning into a yellow?
Oh, you said one question. Now it's 2 questions.
Yes. It's
You
two.
want to know why? Because I
Yeah.
would say it is that feeling of like at dawn when everything is blue and you're trying to understand what the day will be like, and it's
Mm,
just starting to become yellow.
that's awesome. I love it. Right? Definitely so much about days starting, about things building, and some of the curiosity of what will this bring? Where are things going?
I know, right? I actually didn't write that. It was on my Chat GPT screen over here, so I just read it off the screen.
No. So, but we've started talking about this whole notion of where are things going, and I think maybe starting at where things are is usually a good point to extrapolate from that. And what I'm seeing is definitely a lot of conversation in the media, in the news, in some of the work that I do as an adjunct professor, where students say, "Well, professor, do you think I'll still get a job once I graduate
Will
here?"
there be a junior job for me?
Yeah, right. All the
Valid
talk about
fear.
in entry-level jobs being cut to a good degree, in part to AI, also some of the macroeconomic trends. But what are you seeing in the conversations that you're having, knowing that you talk to many people in different industries as well?
It straight up, you are addressing the biggest issue, which is I run a focus community. A lot of the lessons around how can you as a human sustain high performance. How can you be healthy, mindful with your performance, perform well? And if you're a leader, how do you create those conditions for your team to do that, right? That's a lot of the last 7 years is building community around, this app that we built. Now,
Yeah.
I'll tell you, 5, 6 years ago, the engineering managers, the team leaders that were reaching out to me, they wanted to have conversations that ended up talking about hybrid and remote and how do you have people focus when they're, distracted with other things, not
Yeah.
just being in the office. But those conversations have changed this year into, as you brought up, do I need junior developers? Do I need to teach young people these skills? Because we have coding assistants, we have copywriting being done by,
Yeah.
LLMs, and it is real how it's transforming the workplace. So you have some senior people who are guiding LLMs essentially, whether it's in engineering, writing, design also. But that bottom of the ladder is disappearing in front of our eyes.
To me, the question is why. It seems that yes, from an operational point of view, from a financial point of view, I can see that it makes sense to say where can we
Mhm.
reduce our cost. But what I feel many leaders that I talk to in organizations that I see have not figured out yet is what happens once we remove that layer at the bottom of the organizational pyramid, if you will. What comes after that? How do new hires
What is the
become?
pipeline for senior people, for
Yeah,
experienced people?
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Andreas, I completely agree with you. And we do live in for a public company to have the pressure every quarter to increase shareholder value.
Hmm. Yeah.
It's unreasonable to expect that that public company is really planning for deep, like long-term future gains. The CEO, the C-suite, they know that they're there for a couple of years. Like the tenure of a CEO has gone far down. You don't have people running companies with a view of a 10 years from now when I'm still CEO. This is not, like Warren Buffett. I'm
Right.
9,000 years old. I've been doing this since, dirt was young.
Yes.
Now you have CEOs that are like, hey man, maybe I have like 8, 12 quarters in me,
Hmm. Yeah.
and let's just goose the short-term results because of shareholder value. So yeah, that means riffs. That means no attention paid to, well, where do we get the senior people 5 years from now? Not relevant.
A couple of weeks ago, I was on a podcast and run by a successful entrepreneur,
Mhm.
and he said, "Look, I don't want to hire more people than I need to." Like, well, doesn't mean that you need to hire more people than you need to, but also just thinking about where can I take out cost, where can I take out resources,
Mhm.
sounds like a very short-sighted view, especially in light of what you said as well, having a quarterly view instead of a year, multi-year, decade-long view. So, I'm struggling with this question right now of how do new hires, how do recent graduates become proficient, move into a senior role? And also, I think what's missing in a lot of these discussions is what are actually the requirements, the new requirements in a senior role. If the senior role means work more with AI, monitor, guide agents to some extent,
Mhm.
okay, right? That's one of the big pieces we need to define. But what is then the work of a junior person? How can we grow them to become a senior and a senior to become an expert and so on, right? This all goes up the hierarchy.
So let's think about two things that are happening. One thing is, let us name any established old school tech firm, IBM, Hewlett Packard, right? Been around for 50, 100 years. They, like you said, have a very established ladder. This
Mhm.
is how young people come in. This is how we train them. We groom them. They go through these things. They end up at this senior position, right? Now, those companies, as you said, are saying, "Oh my God, like our bottom line is so much better if we just cut the bottom of the ladder away. Why pay for these junior people? Just have a coding assistant, just have a design, LLM sort of thing, generative,
Yeah.
So at the same time that's happening, which we talked about,
Hmm.
you also have this rise of tools that magnify the effects of one person.
Yes.
So suddenly, the young, the 21-year-old version of Andreas could say, wow, using these tools, I can kind of design and code most of this myself. It magnifies my efforts 10x. I don't need
Hmm.
to hire all these people and raise all that money. So maybe, and I'm not saying this is what's going to happen, but just a thought is at the same time, the bottom of the ladder is gone in large companies.
It just shifts, right?
Yeah, you can get experience because now you don't need to be in a large company in order to create an app, a
Hmm.
company.
Yeah. I think that's one of the big opportunities in
Mhm.
learning how to use the tools and how to use them well. In many trainings that I give, one of the key things to get across is use it for more than a Google search.
Mhm.
So when I see leaders, when I see executives, when I see professionals come up with their own ideas, well, I ask you to analyze this data and look at it in or through the lens of a customer or of a real estate developer, and give me the pros and cons for why they might want to negotiate or negotiate differently than what we are proposing.
Mhm.
That's when I think it clicks in, and that's when I see people getting what this wave of AI is about, and what it offers. And to your point, combine that with the ability to create applications, to create digital products much more easily within a couple of days, a couple of weeks. Yes, I mean, fine. Pull in some expertise on your security and data privacy things by
Mhm.
all means. But building the app much more quickly, I think, is absolutely within reach. And then focus on what you're good at, or learn and
So
iterate.
let's think about this because obviously those two letters that appear multiple times in your camera feed, they're often just conflated with LLMs, right?
Mhm.
And to be very reductive, LLMs are probability machines. They're predicting, hey, not just Google auto, correct, suggest the next letter is S. It's saying the next idea, the next word is this, and I'll string it together. And it seems like thought, but it's not deep thought, right? It's pattern recognition and matching. So here's the thing. What is still interesting about human thought? There is an element of creativity, of deep work that you don't really get from an LLM. And we're approaching that sort of asymptotic plateau where it's like, okay, you can keep tuning it, but it's not going to cross over this line and suddenly turn into Picasso or turn into Einstein or turn into, whatever, right? So what does that mean for humans then? This idea of you are somehow trading your energy in the day, whether it's physical or mental energy, into work, right? Valuable work.
Yeah.
As Cal Newport has written, like deep work is a powerful thing when you do something more valuable than what LMs can do. If your job is to shuffle these reports and output this stuff and to put a TPS report in your manager's inbox every week, that's great for an LLM. That's shallow work, right?
Yeah.
But the deep work, where you actually think about like the direction of your company or what are the opportunities in the world, or how could you create something that hasn't been seen before in that way, that's still an opportunity. That's still white space for humans. And that's a lot of what I focus on with, Suka, with our company, is how the tools to do that deep in a repeatable, sustainable way. Because that you can still do better than an LLM.
I think it's so important these days when not only notifications pop up every other minute, every other second,
Yes.
but sometimes you feel like a little puppy. Oh, look at this, look at that. Oh, I could do this. And 5 minutes later, you think, well, what did I actually want to do? Right? So getting distracted so easily, but also through the headlines, through all the noise in the tech space. Obviously, everybody needs to make a big splash. Everybody needs to talk about
Mhm.
how awesome they are, how they're using the funding to develop groundbreaking, world-changing, transformative,
Yes.
supercharged products. That's fine. We get it. If you've been in the space, you know what I'm talking about. But um, Where does this end, and how do you claw back that time? How do you set these boundaries to say, okay, this is what I focus on, this is what I can control, maybe in some respect, and if it is my time and where I spend it and how I spend it, so I can do deep work. I think that's one of
Yeah.
the
So
big
Andreas, here you're speaking to my heart. And obviously there are stories, there are anecdotes that I have to back up some of these principles that come from very talented people in film as well as people in tech, right? So let's talk about some of that. If you are looking at the modern workplace and saying, where do I fit in? I don't want to be replaceable by an LLM. Then you and I agree, I think, that you need to be doing the deep work that an LLM can't do. It can do the shallow work. Draft a stupid response to this email, which we've seen, right?
yes.
So if you're going to learn about yourself, to develop that self awareness, to say, how do I optimize the thing that I do uniquely?
Mhm.
Then there are some established techniques. And by the way, I'm a big proponent of flow states, right? And I know there's probably a sizable cohort of listeners who are very into flow states. I know it's very popular right now. There may be some that are not as familiar. So if it's fair, let me take 30 seconds, just make sure I define what I mean by flow state. Um,
By all means, yeah.
there was a Hungarian American psychologist, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. He had a thesis. He said, if you talk to high performers in very different disciplines, athletes, artists, scientists, inventors, they talk about these highly concentrated states they go into, the states where they do the thing that makes them famous. And
Mhm.
they talk about them in very similar ways. And he was like, what's up with that? What is this phenomenon, right? So he did the research, and at the end of it, he wrote the book Flow. It's the seminal work on this. It is from whence we get the term flow state. And he said the most amazing thing. He said, I chose this word because it was the most beautiful metaphor for what I found,
Mhm.
which is we are all on the river paddling ourselves forward. But if you align your boat with the current, it carries you, it magnifies your efforts. You go further and faster. And he said, these high performers have figured out how to do that repeatably.
Mhm.
So it's a fantastic book. We don't have time to go into all the details of it. But he said, listen, flow states, it is a thing where you lose track of time. You're not staring at the clock. Distractions fall away. You do your best work. You do it faster than you think you will. The end, you feel uplifted as opposed to depleted. And these are really important things if you want to have that consistent practice of outperforming other people and outperforming LLMs, right? So I say all this to say there are some things we can talk about if we want right now that are techniques to get into a flow state. There are ideas around self awareness of how you work where you can optimize that. And if you want, we can go into some of those. Where
Yeah.
would you like to go?
Yeah. I mean, the part about how do you find your flow
Mm-hmm.
when you are asked to work with technology, or when you want to work with technology, and you know that it can do the menial parts, the repetitive things, the shallow
Yes.
work, like you said, and when maybe the high cognitive load work is left for you to do, and um, there are tasks, there are times in our day, times in our week when we enjoy the high cognitive load and being challenged and doing
Right.
something unique and great and putting all your thought and
Mm-hmm.
energy and knowledge and passion into it. And there are others where we're quite happy that all we need to do is reply and say, yes, tomorrow 3 p.m. works. Um, so how do you balance that? How do you find your flow when maybe work all of a sudden becomes
well,
primarily high
well,
cognitive load and might become more stressful?
let's talk about this. So, I'm going to tell you a story and then we'll talk about the principle. When I was coming up in film, this is years ago now, there's a famous screenwriter. His name is Ron Bass, wrote My Best Friend's Wedding and Rain Man and like all these movies in the 80s and 90s, early 2000s. And he was famous or infamous for not talking to his family in the morning. He's like, I'm not the dad who's going to say, who wants pancakes and who needs a ride to school? Like, he's like, I can't talk to you because as soon as we start talking, I can't hear my character voices in my head.
Hmm.
He said, that's what I get paid, $1 million, $2 million a script to write. That's why Julia Roberts says yes to my scripts, or Tom Cruise, they say yes. And his family, of course, was very cool. At $1 to $2 million a script, they're like, Dad, you go write. We'll
Yeah,
make the
yeah,
pancakes.
yeah.
And he knew in the afternoon he was very good with interactive work. Like if he had studio meetings to go over notes, if he had
Mm,
meetings with other writers or collaborations, like that was afternoon for him. Now, the thing he was very self aware about is called chronotype. There's a name for that. And he said, my awareness of what times of day I'm most adept at doing something helps me contain that, like be very productive in these windows. So when you say, oh, well, how do we find the time to do that deep work that really moves us forward? And other times, the shallow work that's just like, oh, I want an hour of mindless returning emails or whatever.
yep.
Here's an easy exercise to understand this about yourself. You can take a piece of paper and a pencil. You don't need anyone's app. You don't need anything sophisticated. Draw a simple grid, morning, afternoon, Monday through Friday. You can do this for 1 week or two. And just jot down, what did you do? How'd you feel? Oh, this morning, wrote blog posts, smiley face. Tomorrow
Yeah,
afternoon, debugged, this feature, frowny face. I'm going to tell you, it is surprising. Do that for a week or two.
right.
You will see the pattern. You're like, man, I should be always returning email right after lunch. I should be writing original things, code or your prose, or whatever, in the morning. Like, it is so clear. And then once you do that, then you can start to say, oh, so my natural rhythm
Mhm.
is such that I should be doing deep work in this window.
Yeah.
And then you say, well, let me optimize the deep work. Like, what are all the conditions precedent I can set to do it well? Or if you're a team leader and you have a bunch of people that are still not replaced with LLMs, real humans, right? You have a bunch of people and you're trying to give them those conditions, you get a sense of how to do that.
I think that's a really good suggestion, and a really good exercise. I mean, I've noticed this about myself.
Mhm.
Say you set a goal for yourself. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm independent, so it's a little easier to set goals for myself, what I do in a given day or what I want to accomplish in
Mhm.
a week. But then something else comes up. There's a customer that calls, says, "Hey, can you help me with this?" Or something is really, really urgent, or there's a great opportunity to respond to a journalist about being featured in an article. But you have to do it by the deadline, or else the
Mhm.
window closes. So I've noticed about myself that when I see these opportunities or situations happen, I get more tense because the
You
thing that
get
I
more
want,
tense.
yeah, I get more tense because I know that there's this thing in the back of my mind that I want to do today, and it's already 12 o'clock and I haven't done it yet. So I know that I will go through that exercise um, for the next week to figure out when are
I'm
my.
so curious what you find.
So one thing that I do already know about myself is that once the house is quiet in the evening, once it's super quiet, I have my most productive. Um,
When the 4 and 6 year olds are asleep.
yes, when everybody is asleep, the best thing is just a computer screen and everything is dark. Um, so that kind of peace and quiet, that's my flow state. Because otherwise, during the day, there's always something popping up and something shiny to look at or go after. So that part I already know, but
Yep.
optimizing the morning, optimizing the afternoon, that's definitely something I'll look at for myself.
I have a question for you.
Go ahead, yeah.
How do you prioritize what you do when you have that time? You're like, tonight I will have focused flow state time.
Hmm.
How do you determine what are the priorities for you to do?
Huh, good question. I would say mainly it's what needs to get done,
Urgent.
but then it's the what do I like to do, and that's the conflict between urgency and interest in that moment. And sometimes, if interest is a little more dominant than urgency, I go to bed thinking, okay, so what did I get done today about the
Hmm.
things of the things that I really wanted to get done? Well, I didn't do that. And what do? I remind myself, but you did all of these other great things that bring you joy and that make you happy and that meant you were following your passion in that moment. And that's good too, having the flexibility and the time to do that. So sometimes it also takes a little bit of reasoning with myself um, to get to that point. But yeah, anyway, how about you?
So, one thing that I found, I'm actually going to speak about something I do wrong or something that's hard for me, which is I found that I procrastinate. So, I call it the cold start problem.
Yeah.
And it when I dug down and said, well, why do I do this? Like, for example, Andreas, tomorrow at 9 a.m., I really need to, I want to finish coding this feature we're working
Mhm.
on. Oh, I want to write a blog post about the new feature, right? And at 9:15, I will still be checking emails. And at 9:30, I'll be just quickly scrolling through the news to see if there's anything important that I need to know, right?
Mhm.
It is procrastination. Let's call it what it is. I'm guilty, right? And I notice that the effect of that is felt at the end of the day when it's
Mhm.
like, oh man, I was busy all day, but I didn't get that feature finished. Right?
Yeah.
That frustrated me because that turned into, the conversation you don't want to have. Oh, Laura, tonight, let's make dinner quick because I have to get back and I'm trying to finish something before tomorrow morning. And I hate that thing of like, after dinner, let me try and work. Oh, I'm going to get up early tomorrow and try and finish today's work before
Mhm.
I start tomorrow's work. Have you ever told yourself that lie?
Occasionally,
Yeah.
maybe.
Okay. So I have done that. So here's the thing that I found. It traced back to my task list. We're going first full circle back to what we were talking about a moment ago, which is I realized that my procrastination, that 9 a.m., why aren't I actually starting, had a lot to do with my task list in one of two ways. Either there was something on there that was just more like a goal. Like it was so big. It was not a task. It was not a discrete, hey, in 30 minutes you can do this. In 70
Mhm.
minutes you can do this. It was, write my book, do some code, some new feature. It's like that's an 18-hour task, right? With QA and everything. And it needed to be broken down. Or second, my task list was so long that it was almost paralyzing. There's 17 things. They all need to get done. And you said you prioritize like urgent and interesting, right? Tasks. So
Yeah.
sometimes that fact that I'd be looking at 17 tasks where I'm like, oh, that needs to happen. Oh, and I do need to pay a tax bill. Oh, and I do need to reply to that email about being on Andres' podcast. That thing. So I'll
Yeah.
tell you one little hack that I came up with is when I choose my three, when I'm saying, what, this
Mhm.
morning, these are three things I really need to do today. Anything else is icing. These three have to get done.
Yeah.
When I start a session, I will have everything but the top three hidden.
Mhm.
And we implemented that into Suka, the focus app that we built. We said, hey, we're going to experiment with this, guys. As soon as you start your session, and we help you get into a flow state. The music plays, it blocks your distractions, stuff like that, right? We're going to show you only the top three things in your task list. This is what you need to get done in this session.
Yeah.
What was interesting is this 77% more likely that our members would finish all three than when they previously could see their
Mhm.
whole task list.
Yeah.
Same tasks, same people, same general stuff, but it was just that sense of like, oh, suddenly this is not paralyzing. And that's a weird mental hack that I didn't realize until I was like, I can't stand seeing that whole list anymore.
Mhm.
You were about to say something a moment ago. What were we going to say?
No, no, no. So sometimes I've tried something similar to say what are the big three things or even the little three things that I need
Yep.
to do
What are the
today
three? Yep.
to feel a sense of accomplishment by the end of the day. And to your point, if I do 4, 5, and 6, that's great. And sometimes there are just little things, to your point, paying a bill or replying to this email that you've started to think about but haven't really fully thought through or articulated. It's these things that if they pile up at some point, they really become urgent and important.
Mm-hmm.
To use that analogy. So yes, right, figuring out what is that optimal rhythm for me. What are the things to prioritize? So maybe coming back to technology, I think on one hand it gets more important to do that when
Mm-hmm.
it
Yeah.
gets easier to delegate, and it gets easier to delegate some of the menial, some of the shallow work, like you said. But on the other hand, there's still a good amount of work left for us in any given day. So how do we prioritize that? How do we find the balance between, hey, cool, I don't need to do that anymore. I have more time for this, or now I have too many things over here that I need to do. How can I give more, to AI, to software, or just space it out differently? But we're getting close to the end of the show, and Stephen, I was wondering if you could summarize the key takeaways for our audience today, when it's all about how can we design for AI attention in the modern
Mhm.
month.
Okay, so let me share some things, highlight a couple things. You and I are in agreement, as many people are right now, that the talent development ladder is broken because many of the bottom rungs are gone now because they are very well done by an LLM that is just a probability machine. It's not incredibly creative, but it works for those menial jobs, right? So the opportunity then is I'm a junior engineer, copywriter, designer. I'm not going to go into a large established company where those jobs are gone, but the AI, the LLM,
Yeah.
I can leverage that to actually try out ideas on my own and get experience directly with very low cost, very low risk, right? So that's
Mhm.
interesting. That development of like these jobs are gone, but maybe you can actually try more is very cool. Another thing is the value of deep work. What humans are still doing better than an LLM has gone up. Because now, if you can actually have that idea, come up with that idea and go, this would change my life, our lives, the world, you can execute that with much more facility than before, right? So some of these ideas around, hey, develop a smart practice around how does your brain work? What time of day is best for you to do deep work? How can you block distractions? How can you set up the right conditions for you to have those moments of wow? And it's not going to happen every day.
Yeah.
Like in my company, we block 9 to 11 just for flow. There's some days nothing great comes out of it, but other days it does. So developing that respect for your brain and flow states and deep work is really important in a world where LLMs are eating the bottom layer of, the workplace.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. I know today's conversation was not the traditional AI governance, program management, stakeholder management type
Should we
thing.
talk tokens, inference? Should I have said compute?
No,
Like,
nope, 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 nope. Nope.
yeah.
um, but I think it's incredibly important to think about these aspects when change gets faster than ever. Work just seems to pile up and gets more, do more with less. All the empty phrases that we've heard and that many of us experience in our daily lives and work. So, Stephen, I'm very thankful and appreciative of your perspective, of
Mhm.
sharing with us what you see and what you recommend. And yeah, just thank you so much for joining.
Andres, thank you for having me. And for those who are listening, I hope this has been entertaining and maybe informative.
Wonderful. All right, folks, see you next time for another episode of What's the Buzz. Bye bye.